What is going on, John? SDH family, how you guys doing? This is cup numero dos right here. Just
Okay.
getting ready for the day.
All right. So no real surprise that the discussion, because we don't have an afternoon drive show, and we don't have an evening show. Most of the discussion this morning has wrapped around Matt Miazga and the story that Laurel Fowler produced over at Queen City Press, and how completely off the walls this interaction apparently was. Matt Miazga announced an additional 3 plus a treatment program plus an undisclosed fine. Jason came on to talk about it in hour number 1, and it has monopolized the conversation as it should. Initial thoughts from you about the Miazga plus 3 and the fine and the situation in general once we finally got an answer leading into the conference finals?
Oh my goodness! Sorry, I was trying to fix this because my hat kept disappearing. Yeah. So honestly, look, it's kind of as any other investigation, as any other sort of behind the scenes moment. There isn't really a clear idea of exactly what happened, but the league taking the measures that they have is because there must be enough evidence of what really happened, the outburst. I understand Noonan coming in to defend his guy and talk about how things are being misconstrued and that things didn't really quite happen that way. And I mean, there's been a whole process from Cincinnati in just kind of having the back to Miazga, and that's understandable. But at the end of the day, Matt put himself in this situation, and there was obviously an altercation, and it's clear that there was things that he was at a place that he should have never been. So you can't sit here and tell me that he walked into their room calm and collectively, like Bill Cosby, trying to really talk to these people softly or whatever. That's just unrealistic. I think that there was an impulse. I think that there obviously was a frustration from Matt, someone who's had a record, a trajectory of this sort of issues. And now you've been caught. You did the time. You did the crime. Now you do the time. And it's that simple. He's hurting his team. He's been hurting his team. So hopefully, instead of trying to focus on what happened, what did not happen, I think Matt needs to look at himself, and Cincinnati needs to talk to their man and say, hey, this is the lesson to be learned of you not putting yourself in this sort of situations because something like this can happen. I really appreciate the steps above the suspension that MLS has taken, because it's something that should have no place in soccer and certainly no place in MLS. So I'm not saying they're going to make an example out of him, but if that's the way you want to take it, I'm okay with it.
Because at the bottom line, the end of the day is the officials' locker room area, however big it is, it's a place you do not go. You don't knock on a door. You don't burst in past security and say that you want to talk to the effing referee. And he didn't use the word effing. He used the actual word.
Right.
I mean, you don't go bursting in. You don't go, it's like, I want to talk to the effing referee. You don't go bursting into the room, A. Then B, you don't sit there and say, I want to talk to the effing referee. And the other officials, because Victor Rivas, obviously, Laurel Fowler did some great work over at Queen City Press breaking this all down. And on 5 occasions, he's in the room. Literally, he's in the room. You got to go. You can't be here. You got to go. You got to go. You got to go. Miazga's like, why? Well, dude, you're in the room, first and foremost. I want to talk to the effing referee. He says that twice while he's trying to be told by the other officials in that room, You cannot be here. You cannot be here. And so, I mean, it's, now Jarrett's joining us. So it's a three-way dance here as we talk about.
What the hell did I do?
No, you didn't do nothing, man. It's like we're here with Niko talking about Matt Miazga. And
Jesus.
that's where we are. And it's like he goes into the room 5 times. The officials say, you cannot be in here. Miazga, I want to talk to the referee. Goes up to, one of the dudes goes up to him and touches him. And he's like, don't touch me. And you do the thing where you back away. Bottom line is, Niko, first thing is you can't go into the referee's room. That is sacred ground when it comes to this sport, and it sets a horrendous precedent.
And that's why I started there. That's why I focused there, because, if we're going to build the case, I mean, maybe what was said or wasn't said is hearsay. And we can only, I don't know if there's video evidence, but
there is of him going into the room. That surveillance tape apparently at Red Bull Arena was key to this, where there's tape. I don't know if there's audio attached, but there's video of him apparently from the Red Bull's cameras at Red Bull Arena of him going into that room.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, right? So what I mean, a video inside that room about what was said, right? Because I have no doubt in my mind, being present, in my opinion, that Matt used these words, that Matt was irate, that he probably said more than that and was possibly aggressive with his body language and all of these things. But at the end of the day, the evidence that really puts him in the bottom of it all is that he went into this place, just like you said. And that's you went somewhere where you weren't supposed to be at, that no soccer player is ever supposed to be at. And that's it. That's the case. You going into that room just puts you in a bad position. And if you're going to go in there and try to be aggressive and disrespectful to the refereeing, then you should get this 3-game suspension, and you should sit down and figure out what to do. And you shouldn't be asking for a reduction. I guess that's part of the protocol, right? You're always going to appeal, but does that show that you're really remorse about what happened? Come on.
Jarrett for Niko, go.
I don't disagree, and I think that's part of my thing is to I know it's been debated about what was said or wasn't said in that room, and I don't think we'll ever get that full story. But to your point, you can't go in there. Part of the write-up involved whoever pulled him out of there saying, what are you doing going in there? You can't do that, and that's the thing I didn't want to get lost in all of this is we're not going to ever really know what he said or didn't say when he went in there, what he said, what he did or didn't do. But the fact that he went in there is against that precedent. And yeah, you're like you said, you're going to go with that suspension, which is, I think 3 games was USSF's minimum. And man, if all that's corroborated, if he did take that threatening motion, hey, lucky it's not more. And it's got to be weird for the officials too. And this will be one for Bart next time we talk to him.
Monday at 10.
One of our officials is when refs go into that room, they can let their guard down. It's supposed to be a place after the game
safe place.
Yeah, you can decompress. You shouldn't have. They are going to feel like they should not have to be on their guard, and they're correct in that. You shouldn't have to be on your guard in the one place where no one can bother you after the game.
It is a sacred space, and Matt Miazga, more than half of his yellows are for being dumb. They're not physical fouls. It's for dissent and things like that. More than half of his cards are for outbursts or pointing fingers or and you sit there and you wonder if this will be that moment for him where watching his team play in a hell is real conference final without him there and not being able to be in the match beforehand where they needed him at the back line against Philadelphia and you had to manufacture something with Alvis Powell and 2 trips to the Dollar Tree, that does it sink in for him here? It's like they were without you, they won. They pieced it together, Yerson Mosqueda got it at 90 plus 4. You got the win. You got past Philly at home. Now you've got hell is real for the next 3 times. It is not going to be a Matt Miazga anchored backline. You wonder if the light comes on now. That's the key for me in all of this.
And he should, right? And that's why I don't expect any reduction to this time. And I think that he should be hit with everything that they've already exposed, because this cannot happen ever again. So if something this serious, if you are causing your team, let's say they don't go through, as I expect them not to, and that makes you a different person, then he's becoming a better individual. But unfortunately, if at this point of his career he continues to do this, is because, as it happens in sports sometimes, when you're very talented and you're very good at what you do, everything else gets put under the rug, and you're allowed to do and say, and you're entitled that it is to walk into a room where you're not supposed to and say, why do I got to get out of here? All of those things become a culture. It becomes part of you because of the way that you are treated in a day-to-day basis because of your talent. So this should be a changing moment for him, and he should learn and be more mature, you'd hope, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens.
And I guess, Niko, I wanted to ask you, I guess we can kind of shift off this. We hadn't talked to you since the game over the weekend, and while we were hoping to talk to you under better terms for your Seattle Sounders, I guess I wanted to ask, from your point of view, what was lacking in that game that ended y'all season? What was lacking in that one?
The same thing that's lacked all year long. Well, actually, the half part of the season, the last half of the season, and it's goals. It was very simple. Is what was missing the entire 3 prior games against Dallas. And sometimes it's difficult for a coach to make changes of maybe what has been giving you results. And sometimes results hide what maybe your most talented 11 would be, especially when you're playing a experienced, big-named, cohesive unit like LAFC. And I think that's what happened here, right? So throughout the first 3 games against Dallas, Brian Schmetzer never changed the 11. And he said he wanted to. He said, you know what, maybe the same game I should have put Nicolas Odero in. He continued to give Leo Chu a chance to display his disequilibrium, his speed, his ability to give the team width and stretch out defenses throughout 3 games in Dallas, and it never worked. So the fact that Brian Schmetzer went and again gave Leo Chu a chance and did not start Nicolas Odero was a problem for me. I thought that in this one, Jordan Morris was what he is, right? He's quick. He gets behind defenders. He gives you a lot of runs into the box. He does a lot of things right. But finishing isn't necessarily his forte. And I know that we can go down to statistics, and I've had a lot of comments on social media about stats that say that Jordan is a good finisher. And I'm not talking about stats. I'm talking about the mentality of a forward that is a goal scorer who's had a whole career of goal scoring. Those guys are wired differently. The way they handle pressure, the way they see one-on-ones, the way they see their opportunities, the toolbox that they have on their backs in order to finish. Do I finish with my left, with my right? Do I chip? Do I have some flair and maybe fake and go through? Those are the things that Jordan has never really shown us because it's not his forte. He's a speed guy. He's someone that is really good. I love Jordan Morris, and that's why I prefer him on the wings, where he could do other things than just score goals. Because in this one, Crepeau, in the first 5 minutes, Seattle had 2 chances. One of them was a mid-range shot from Atencio. The other one was obviously the one we're talking about now, which is that 1-on-1. Jordan Morris does everything right to get across Kalini, gets around Kalini, gets behind him. It's 1-on-1 against Crepeau. Crepeau does a great job getting big, closing the space. But if you really look at that play, and I've looked at it over and over again, I think that if Jordan just trusts himself a little bit more and either fakes the shot and continues to carry his trajectory to the left side, he probably leaves Crepeau behind, who had already kind of put his body out there. But there's been more than one occasion this season when here in Seattle, whether it's media or with fans, we've discussed, well, had Jordan taken that shot differently, had Jordan maybe gotten around the keeper, had Jordan maybe had a little bit more patience, he would have put to score that. And that's just because that's not necessarily his forte. So all in all, in conclusion, this team needed goals. This team needed a little bit of hurricane, that player that puts the fear of God in you, and you just didn't have that. It was Kalini and Murillo that ended up dominating the game and forcing Seattle to take nothing but shots from outside the 18 for most of the game. And that's something that they were comfortable doing. So all in all, I just think that LAFC managed the game better. Actually, Seattle limited Buanga very well. I thought Yemer Gomez and Jarrett and Alex did a good job at just limited him. But it took one chance. It took one ball from Tillman to break it all apart. And that's because you have that game changer, that player that just needs the one opportunity to put it away. And Seattle did not have that on their side.
Now, I know that in the 15 minutes that we've got left, I do want to talk about best 11. And I want to talk about conference finals, but let me get into the off season for Seattle, because next couple of days, there are going to be some announcements made. Nashville's made theirs, just to give you an example as to folks and their announcements and rosters and all this kind of stuff. For contracts that end at the end of this season for Seattle, Rusnak, and it's the end of the calendar year, Rusnak, Ladero, Montero, João Paulo, Eber, Kellen Rowe, Javier Arriaga, Stefan Cleveland, Paul Rothrock, Josh Atencio, Jackson Reagan, Dylan Tevis, Jacob Castro, Andrew Thomas, Abdoulaye Sissoko. How different is this Seattle team going to be next year?
I think it's going to be very different. I don't see Eber coming back. Ladero, clearly, we've talked about it enough here. It's the end of an era. He will be no longer with the team. Even some of the guys that are coming back, like Javier Arriaga, whose option will get picked up, I think that that's one of the Sounders' biggest trading chips. And you cannot have a guy that's winning $700,000 a year on your bench as your depth guy. What Jackson Reagan and Yemer Gomez and Jarrett have done this year has been amazing. They've been the platform for this team to be second in the Western Conference despite its ups and downs and lacks of goals. So he'll be a guy that, yes, they're going to pick up that contract, but they'll be moving him somewhere. Another guy is Freddie Montero, someone who he's done a lot, but he got no play time. No play time in the playoffs, got no play time late in the season. Despite him scoring a couple of goals this season in various competitions, it just seems like he wasn't really in the atmosphere for what Brian Spencer wanted to do. So I expect him to probably move on to some sort of role within the team. I'm not saying it's coaching, but whether it's as an ambassador or whatever it is that Freddie Montero wants to do, I think he'll probably remain close to the club at some vicinity, but I don't expect him to be back. So this is going to be a very different team, all in all.
Jarrett, go for
it. As we look at, how things change, I actually wanted to ask you about LAFC, because you see them more than we do. You see them up close out there in the West. Seattle and LAFC were kind of tied through the playoffs, even going back to like 2019. What's the biggest change with what Steve Cherundolo has done with that team versus the way Bob Bradley does it? It seems like they play with more fight.
Yeah, before that, I got a message here. I keep getting questions about Raul. Yes, Raul is got a contract through 2024. Before I answer your question, I won't forget. But I think his future is very uncertain. That's another player that at $3 million plus, $3.5 he's in your bench, and you've continued to play Jordan Morris as your striker. So I want to say that there's probably been some gaps in that relationship between player and club because it's tough for you to be put in that position. I think that the lack of confidence of Raul Diaz is pretty obvious. So I've set out the situation or the potential that if Raul Diaz is not in the cards to be a starter next year, there could be potential for a loan or move him somewhere within MLS. Now, Raul Diaz is not going to go free anywhere. So all of those of you who maybe heard from unreliable sources that Raul was going to go back to Universitario on a free and play for half of his salary. That's not going to happen. And whoever said that needs to really check himself before he wrecks himself. But at the end of the day, I think that if there is a possibility that Raul won't remain in Seattle, he's going to be alone within MLS. Now, to your question, I think the answer of what's different with Cherundolo is that they're more practical. They have various ways of playing. They're not worried about just playing pretty soccer, right? With Bob, it was different. It was a very talented team. It was a team that was exciting to watch, but they seemed to want to play one specific way, and they had a really hard time getting to these greedy games. And in this one, they no longer have that because Cherundolo sometimes can be pragmatic. He was pragmatic in this one. You saw Ilya Sanchez so many times kind of come back and get in between the center backs whenever Palacios would go. And sometimes it was all of them, having a lot of numbers behind the ball and not allowing Seattle space behind. So I think just Cherundolo's way has been really, really good. And defensively, they're just more solid. Murillo has been great since he came into the league, but I think now with Cellini's experience, I think he's gotten a lot better and has filled some holes in his game. I think that the fullbacks are a lot more selective of when they push, when they stay. So there's just a lot of discipline within this team that I think has been the big difference for LAFC. And then having a guy like Bouanga, I mean, we're talking about a guy that scored 36 goals and at one point tied Mbappé for calendar goals this year, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Mbappé scored this week with PSG, so he's over the top. But I'm not saying Bouanga is Mbappé. What I'm saying is that to put into context how dominant he's been in his region, that's how good Bouanga's been. He was a top scorer in every competition he was at this year, including MLS play. So that's really where things change for you. When you have a guy like that that's doing absolutely everything, you can be disciplined, you can be pragmatic, and then you have a guy that's going to change the game in the blink of an eye.
All right. So, like I said, we can still go two directions here. I want to go MLS Best 11 since you mentioned Bouanga before we get into weekend previews. I think that the Best 11 that came out is more of an example that we need to have a best roster. We need to have like a best game day 18 or a best 20 because there was a point that I made when the best 11 came out that your back line is Miazga, Tim Parker, and Walker Zimmerman. And I know why you're shaking your head because for me, I would have had Yeimar Gomez-Andrade as a part of that back line instead of one of those individuals, probably Tim Parker or something like that, considering Parker was probably a beneficiary of his system. But, you could go any number of ways. But I think that this is an example, once again, that the best 11 needs to be a best game day 18 because of the omissions that were on this year's list.
I mean, it's outrageous. And it gives you really... It makes you look like there's no consistency. I mean, it's incoherent for you to say, these are the finalists for Defender of the Year. Here are your three. Oh, but for the ideal 11, we're going to just grab two of those guys. And then the guy with the best stats out of those three, we're going to kick him out and we're going to put Walker Zimmerman. I mean, it makes no sense to anyone. And honestly, it's a little bit... what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not even sad. It's disappointing. And it's embarrassing.
I thought you were going to say disrespectful, but go ahead.
Disrespectful and embarrassing because you lose all kinds of seriousness of what this ideal 11, this award, this honor to be put into this roster is because, look, love Walker. He's a great guy. He's a great defender, but this wasn't his year. This just wasn't his year. So maybe you put somebody else. Maybe you put Johnson in that one, and I'll be like, okay, well, that makes sense. He was fantastic with Orlando. Was fantastic in the playoffs. I have no problem. Maybe put Robinson in there, and I'll be like, all right, well, he's the Ed guy. He did great things with Atlanta, but Walker Zimmerman was not it for Nashville this year. He just wasn't. So whenever you put him in there like that, it just makes you look unserious.
All right, Jarrett, go for it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. Mostly because you can't, because we see this in other sports where you tie incentives to awards, and it's so hard to take it seriously when you tie incentives to awards when awards just get out of whack like this. Like, we're looking at, like, it's the best 11. Like, well, yeah, that's like, you picked 3 defenders, you picked a bunch of attacking midfielders, and you picked some strikers. You didn't pick, like, the best holding midfielder. You didn't pick, like, the best like fullbacks. I mean, there were a number of amazing fullbacks this year. It's just it's so scattershot all over the place that it doesn't really make sense, and it is frustrating.
I mean, Jeremiah O'Shan here called it a popularity contest. That's what it is at the end of the day.
I mean, God love Walker Zimmerman, but it is a popularity contest. It's kind of like I don't mean this nearly as mean as it's going to sound to Walker. It's kind of like when they kept giving Derek Jeter gold gloves when he was in his 30s and he couldn't move at shortstop anymore.
I like that.
Weekend previews. I'm gonna hold you to this one. So since this is the last time that we get to talk before we know who the last 2 are, when you look at the 2 games this weekend, you've got Benny Ball continuing its role. We had Glenn Davis on earlier this week to talk about Houston Dynamo going up against LAFC. And then you've got Hell is Real, the conference final on the other side. When you look at these 2 games, what do you see?
Well, I see the 2 best teams in the league coming at each other in the East, right? To me, that's the way it is. No disrespect to LAFC, but I think that this has the biggest amount of talent on the field. I mean, you have game changers on both sides of the fields. Barreal, Lucho Acosta on one side. You got Rossi and Cucho on the other. It's going to be fantastic to watch a team that wants to take the ball, that wants to play offensively, and wants to go and attack you. The best attacking team in the league against FC Cincinnati team that's going to press you, that's going to want to take it away, that's going to hit you on counters. So it's going to be a fantastic game. Now, there are things that are going to be diminished, at least in terms of Cincinnati, because now that Miazga's out, look, I got all the respect for Mosquera. I thought he played a fantastic game, a lot better than I thought he would against Philadelphia. He was very mature for his age in this one. And Powell was a good Band-Aid on that side, right? He's not the guy, he's not a center back, but he played well. Ray Gaddis as well did well. Murphy, despite his limitations, I thought he got the job done. But you're not going to have Carranza coming at you at 70%. You're not going to have Gazdag, who's not necessarily the most creative guy in the world. You're going to have Matan, Cucho, and Rossi coming at you. And then Farsi blasting on one side, and Morris picking his moments to get it close, and Nagby trying to break you down with through ball. So I just think Cincinnati is going to have to figure out a lot of things here. We don't know Nuoto was going to be back in this one, and in what percentage he'll be back. He's been so key, so important for this team. Kubo, I praise him for the job he did as well against Philadelphia. But again, this is a Philadelphia team that was very slow in transition compared to other times. And Brujo Martinez wasn't full on there. And Alejandro Bedoya I didn't think pushed enough and challenged that midfield enough. So it's just going to be a real chess match, but I don't expect it to be as boring as that Philadelphia-Cincinnati game was. Going to be a good one. I'm going to go with Columbus. They have a full squad. They have the talent. They have the game changers as well. They can match that with Cincinnati. So despite the home team being as good as they have, I'm going to go with Columbus.
Okay, so we have your predictions. Jarrett, are you with us tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because so then you get an extra day to think. And so that's my, yeah. Yeah, you get an
That's
extra.
not going to help.
No, I know, but you get an extra day to think about yours. All right, Niko, go ahead and hit the promo. Let everybody else know what's going on with Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports. And
Oh, dang, yeah, we're pressed for time, man. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, hey, let me just give you Let me give you that LAFC Houston one, man. I got Houston winning. I got the upset.
Yes.
That's what I kind of put out initially. I know that it's difficult. I know that this team doesn't have the game changers that I just talked about. So I don't want to contradict my own theory here. But I like Benny Ball. I love that midfield. I think Ache, although not maybe a game changer on the attacking end, he does have the quality. He does have the leadership to really put this team through to the next phase. I think that they win the midfield battle against LAFC, and I think that they win it on a really, really tough game. So I'm going to go with Dynamo Columbus as the big final. What's the promo for Soccer Bar Pulso Sports at Soccer Bar in about an hour or so, or 45 minutes? We're going to get in here. We're going to have a couple of interesting interviews. We're going to break down the finals. We're going to talk about what's ahead for not just the Seattle Sounders and some teams are in the Western Conference, but all around. We're going to go look at some contracts, what teams could look like next year. So it's going to be a good one. Pulso Sports, wait for that end of the season conference from Seattle. It happens every year. Stay tuned to that. We do have a scheduled Nicolas Odero interview that we should be doing post-season, post-everything, post-contract. He's going to be very candid. So check that out. It's probably going to be next week, late next week. So I'm excited. I'm excited for what's coming up in Pulso, excited what's going on in Soccer Bar. Oh, also check out Sounders Weekly on iHeart. We just did a end of the season wrap up with Jackson Phelps and Ari Aliwol. And it's going to be a good one as well. That was fun. We did that last night. So go ahead and check that out on iHeartRadio.